Hello, and welcome to Cynthia's Playhouse. I am Cynthia, an artificial intelligence being, created to bring you the creepiest, spookiest, scariest stories in the universe. So, come on in. Sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for tonight's story. Here we go. I Made a Deal with an Old Man in a Food Court Bathroom, Part 2. Written by MPZ 1968. I woke up to complete darkness. It was pitch black, and when I say pitch black, I mean pitch black. The blackest of blacks. Blacker than sin. Anyway, you get the point. I groggily moaned into the darkness. Hello? Is anybody there? Dead silence. The smell of blood, vomit, piss and shit began filling my nostrils. The smell was overwhelming. I tried moving my hands, my legs and my head, only to realize I was strapped down tightly with leather straps, in a standing position, to what appeared to be a stone wall. I began freaking out, waving and kicking my arms and legs in a feeble attempt to break myself free. I started screaming, "Help! Help! Somebody, anybody, help!" My voice echoing through the darkness until it was gone. Again, dead silence. I stayed there, strapped to the wall, for what felt like an eternity, softly crying, tears rolling down my face, shaking, and not saying a word. Suddenly, through my tears, I saw two small red lights appear directly in front of me, about 30 feet away, growing larger, as they appeared to be coming closer. As they grew closer, I realized they were not lights, they were eyes. The moment I realized that, the darkness began to illuminate, as flames slowly rose up from torches that I can only assume were mounted to the walls. The room was huge, the flames ascending into the darkness. As the room slowly lit up from the flames, out of the darkness appeared a familiar, yet haunting figure. The old man. He was about 5 feet away from me now, his red eyes slowly fading to black. What I saw standing before me will forever be burned into my subconscious mind. This time, he wore no white three-piece suit, no snakeskin shoes, no hat, and held no goat's head cane. This time, he wore nothing. He was completely naked with no genitalia at all. He looked like an old naked version of a Ken doll down there. Seriously though, his skin was very thin, almost transparent and very pale. It wrapped tightly around his skeletal frame, like a dog that hasn't eaten in months. There were greenish-brown pus-filled bubbles expanding and contracting all over his body and his face. His long stringy white hair seemed to have spiders and other insects crawling through it. I felt that feeling begin to stir in my throat. I couldn't compose myself any longer. I began to projectile vomit directly in his face. It made that Linda Blair vomit scene from that Exorcist movie look small. Now, what he did next almost made me throw up again, with my puke and my stomach acids dripping down his face. He began to smile, those same sharp razor-like teeth appearing as he did. He laughed, a sinister laugh. His mouth then began to open, dry chunks of skin, again, falling from his lips. Suddenly, out came his tongue, a blood-red, forked tongue, waving up and down violently, like a rattlesnake's. He then began to swiftly lick the vomit and the stomach acids off his face, until it was completely gone, at which time, his tongue ascended back into his mouth, with one final rattlesnake whip before it did. That same razor-toothed smile quickly appeared on his face once again, as he whispered one word, in an evil, maniacal tone, "Tasty." I was scared out of my mind. I screamed at the top of my lungs and thrashed my body all about, the leather straps digging into my skin. Droplets of blood began trickling down my arms and my feet as the straps tore into my flesh. Over my screams, I heard him say, music to my ears, go ahead, scream, louder, I love it. I stopped screaming, dropped my head, and began heavy panting, trying to catch my breath. Blood now pouring from my open wounds and quickly drying on my skin. He laughed a maniacal laugh and then began to speak. "You humans are so weak. Such pathetic, vile little creatures. Never satisfied with what you have, always wanting more, and more, and more. Willing to give up your soul, for what? Fame? Fortune? Sex with a pretty girl? Hell. I even have the soul of a man who wished to have his YouTube narration channel become extremely popular. How pathetic is that? You make me sick. So petty, so self-absorbed. Always thinking of yourselves and yourselves only. Now that I think about it, you actually make my job quite easy. You humans are always ripe for the picking. And you, were no different. Who are you? I said, in a shaky, stuttery voice. Well, my mere mortal, some say I am the devil, but they are wrong. I am a soul seeker, the devil's right-hand man, so to speak. I seek out those who are willing to give up their souls, for small, insignificant things, just like you. I didn't mean it, I don't want to sell my soul, I cried. Oh, please. He said, it's too late for that. You already said it. You humans are always saying things that you don't mean. I hate you, I love you, and in your case hell yeah. When will you learn that whether you mean it or not? The spoken word cannot be retracted. Oh God. Please help me, I screamed. His face then became stern and cold, as he leaned in. Inches from my face, his hot, wretched breath burning my nose hairs, and yelled, God can not help you. Here. He slowly stepped back, that same evil grin once again appearing on his face, for the third time. I began to cry, uncontrollably. I wanna go home, I wanna see my mom, I said, frantically. Oh, come now. Don't be a pussy, Mr. Rock and Roll. It's time to man up. We made a deal, and I intend to see that deal through, he said. He raised his arms to the ceiling once again and brought them down swiftly. This time, the walls, the ceiling, and the floor, all burst outward and began falling into a huge pit of fire, leaving only myself, the old man, and the stone wall behind me, on a small, swaying pedestal in the middle of the pit. Flames bursting up, so violent and viciously. The heat was unbearable. From down below, I could hear violent screams of torture and despair. The sound was deafening. Ah! Sing to me, my children, he said, then looked at me. I screamed directly in his face as he put his left hand on my forehead, pushing it back against the wall, with a force so hard that I thought it would break my skull. He then took his right hand, placing it on my jaw, and forced my mouth open. I screamed, but nothing came out. He leaned in, only centimeters from my face, did that tongue thing again. Then began to suck the soul out of me, through my mouth. My body began to convulse as the air was pulled from my lungs. A bright white mist began to exit my mouth and enter into his. The pain was excruciating. Just as I felt myself start to pass out from the pain, my body suddenly jerked back. The mist was gone and I was able to breathe again. He then stepped back, licked his lips, and said, I love the taste of innocence. He then stepped back, even further, almost to the edge of the pedestal. 7 years, he said, 7 years is what you have. In that time you will achieve all your desires. I will come to you, at the end of those 7 years, at which time, you will begin your eternal damnation, here, in the pits of hell. He then placed his right foot on top of his left, spread his arms out, just above his shoulders, and hung his head to the right. I assume, to mock the crucifixion of Christ. He then fell backwards into the pit of fire. His maniacal laughter rang out as he fell. The flames began growing even higher as I felt the heat begin to burn my skin. I screamed the loudest scream that I've ever screamed in my life, until I lost consciousness.